When I think of a successful upstart premium brand, Hyundai's luxury division Genesis quickly comes to mind. This company has only been around in America since 2017, and every year they seem to come out with new products that impresses both consumers and enthusiasts alike. Now, last year we saw the company's very first electric vehicle in the form of the Genesis GV60. It's built on the same architecture that also underpins the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6. However, unlike its more plebeian rivals, Genesis offered a little bit more power, at least initially, more luxury, more technology, and of course a unique style. Now for 2024, Genesis is introducing an even cheaper, lower priced rear-wheel drive variant with more range. However, this week, as you can see, we are testing out the flagship of the lineup. This is a 2024 GV60 Performance, which means we have nearly 500 horsepower under the hood, courtesy of dual electric motors, and up to 235 miles of range. So if you guys are looking for a premium luxury EV that charges fast, accelerates fast, and has unique style, how does the latest version of the Genesis GV60 stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling of the GV60, let me go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys what's underneath here, because like every other EV, everyone always wants to know, does this vehicle have a frunk? And if you guys have seen my previous review or the Korean twins, you'll know that it does have a frunk, although it's a very, very small one. Now, underneath the hood, you're going to see a big plastic cover. However, if you lift underneath this cover, you can see there is a little bit of space under here that you can basically put the mobile charger that the car comes with. It has basically 0.71 cubic feet of storage space. That's what Genesis says. It's actually a little bit smaller versus what you get in the Kia EV6 and the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which offer 0.85 cubic feet of storage space. But let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs since we're already underneath the hood. Now, this vehicle is available with either a single motor rear drive or dual motor all-wheel drive. The rear drive variant is new for 2024. That model makes 225 horsepower and offers up to 294 miles of range, courtesy of 19-inch wheels, which help improve the aerodynamics. The advanced package adds a second electric motor to the front axle, delivering 314 horsepower. This model, however, is the performance variant, which means we have 429 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. Now, that was the most powerful variant of the eGMP architecture that it shares with the Hyundai and the Kia. However, since then, the Kia EV6 GT now offers 576 horsepower. The upcoming Ioniq 5N will offer up to 641 horsepower. When you guys hit the boost button on the steering wheel, this car offers up to 483 horsepower. Genesis says it's good for 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission, and it draws its power from a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, I suspect that Genesis may update the performance basically the motors for 2025 and maybe take the engines or the powertrains from the EV6 GT or the Ioniq 5N, which the Ioniq 5N actually has a bigger 85 kilowatt hour battery pack for the 2025 model year. So I suspect Genesis may take that. Regardless, this vehicle should have a top speed of around 151 miles an hour. So it's among the quickest accelerating and quickest traveling EVs that you can get out there. In terms of the range, this model is good for 235 miles. The advanced package, when you go for the 19-inch wheels, is good for up to 264 miles or 248 if you go for the 20-inch wheels, 294 again if you go for the single motor rear drive variant, which has the most range, which is closer to that 300-mile mark. This vehicle is an SUV, at least Genesis says it's an SUV. It's more like a hatch. It'll tow a maximum of 2,000 pounds, and as this vehicle sits, it weighs in at just under 5,000 pounds, so it's about 200 pounds heavier than the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. But let's go ahead and close up this hood and talk about the exterior styling. Now, this color is a $1,500 extra charge. It's called Matterhorn White Matte. So it's a matte finish color. It doesn't have the metallic flex like I showed you guys on the 2023 model that I had last year, but you can see it still has this beautiful finish to it, and I really love how the matte color still has that shimmer when the light hits it. The paint itself has a really interesting finish because, again, it doesn't have a clear coat on it, or at least the shiny pearly finish on it, which means you can't take this through an automatic car wash or you'll scratch up your paint. I love the new Genesis logo here, of course, which looks really good on the front. The headlights, you can see this car has the dual line headlights with the individual LEDs. It's got around 5 LEDs on each stacked portion. You can see there's an LED turn signal, LED daytime running lights, LED low and high beams. That actually is the low beam there. The high beam, I suspect, brightens up the other outer LEDs. which the headlights of this car are also very bright at night. You can see the Genesis Crest grille has been kind of moved because you don't need an actual airflow here for an EV. So it's down here where it has the diamonds integrated into the actual grille insert. You have a front camera system that's nicely integrated there. And then the performance version includes basically this like a splitter at the front, which kind of gives it a more aggressive look to it. But overall, let me know in the comment section what you guys think of the design. When this car first came out, I didn't love it, especially in that ugly highlighter yellow that Genesis offered. That color has been discontinued for 2024. I imagine most people didn't buy it. But you can also get this car in purple and other colors as well, like a green color, which I think would look really interesting, especially if I could see one of those in person. But moving around the side profile, you can see this is an SUV again. That's what Genesis says, but it's really just a tall hatchback. And what's interesting about this car is it's actually the smallest variant of the eGMP architecture at 177.8 inches long with a 114-inch long wheelbase. This vehicle is around 5 to 7 inches shorter than the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. However, compared to something like the Volvo C40 Recharge or the Audi Q4 Sportback e-tron, this is kind of in between those vehicles. The Volvo is shorter, the Audi is slightly longer. So this is a pretty small EV. I kind of think that Genesis should have made their version the biggest out of the corporate platforms, but again, Genesis wanted to go with a sportier look, I guess. But looking at the wheels, you can see these wheels are really attractive looking. They have like a satin silver finish to them. They're a 21-inch wheel. It's standard on the performance grade. It's riding on a 255 by 40 R21-inch Michelin all-season tire. The brakes are also slightly larger at 14.2 inches, almost 14 inches in the rear. These brakes aren't quite as big, however, as the brakes you're going to get on the Ioniq 5N or the EV6 GT. It's clamped down by 4-piston calipers. You have an electronically adjustable all-independent suspension, although it's not an air suspension. You can see the wheel arch moldings are painted in like a satin silver color, which kind of is accentuated on the lower rocker panel as well. The mirrors are electrically folding. They also have cameras and integrated turn signals. The sky panoramic roof is also standard equipment. It is very darkly tinted, although sadly it doesn't open to actually vent air, which I kind of wish it did. You can see a lot of the chrome trim down here has kind of been blacked out, but it still has kind of like a dark chrome finish over here. And then looking at this angle here, you can see it has a really interesting look to it from this profile. Genesis kind of went with a swoopier coupe-like design. There's also this interesting kind of triangle zigzag shape in the actual D-pillar, which creates a unique styling effect. There's also a spoiler over there that again shows you this is a coupe style SUV. And then if you push that button here, you can see there's the charge port door. Genesis will eventually adopt the NAC Tesla charging plug for 2025. However, this 2024 model still has the J1772 plug with the CCS fast combo charger here. This vehicle still is one of the fastest charging EVs on the market. It'll accept up to 350 kilowatts of max DC fast charging on level 3. That's good for going from 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes. It has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, so you can go from 0 to 100% on a level 2 on a 48 amp in about 7 hours. So again, one of the fastest charging vehicles in the industry. I also love that powering opening and closing door. And then looking at the rear, you can see it also looks very interesting. I think the car looks more attractive from the front. I don't particularly love the rear taillights and how low this vehicle sits, along with that spoiler that kind of cuts in between. You can see it spells out Genesis boldly at the back. You have obviously a slightly more aggressive rear diffuser on the back here. And you can see the taillights are also all LED, LED taillights, LED reverse lights, LED turn signals and whatnot. Opening up the cargo area, this is where the smaller size of the GV60 does reduce the cargo a little bit compared to something like the Ioniq 5, but Genesis says that when you have the seats up, you get around 24 cubic feet of storage space back here. Now 24 is decent, however, the sloping roof is going to obviously eat into the space. If you look underneath here, you can see there is a little bit of underfloor storage, which is nice, where you can put the mobility kit. You can also find the connector there if you want to use this vehicle as a mobile charger. If you fold down the rear seat here, Genesis says that expands it out to around 54.7 cubic feet. Now that's more versus what you get in the EV6. However, it's a little bit less versus what you get in the Ioniq 5. So now let's go ahead and talk about the interior of this 2024 Genesis GV60 Performance. But before we get inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. You can see Genesis has a pretty unique looking key fob that actually almost matches the exterior color. I don't think this actually is the case if you get a different color of this car. All of them just come with this kind of white key fob, which is unique to the Genesis family. You can see it has the Genesis logo here. It has buttons on the side for lock, unlock, power liftgate, panic, and you can also remote start the vehicle. You can also use the Smart Park feature, which is technically Hyundai face term, where you can move the vehicle forward and back from the key fob itself. If you're standing near the car, that's if you need to pull it in and out of a tight parking spot. You can also push and hold that, I believe, to unlock or open the charge port door, which is nice. Genesis also offers a digital key function where you can use your phone as a key, which is nice. And as I approach the vehicle here, you can see the door handles, they are retracted. And the vehicle has a walk-away approach vehicle, or an auto approach feature where if I have the key fob on me, you saw the door handles popped out. The door also unlocked for me. This car also has a camera here, which I showed you guys in my review last year, where this car has facial recognition. If you have it set and programmed to your face, you can basically touch this area here, stand right here, it'll look at your face and scan it, and then it'll unlock or lock the car depending on if you have it actually set up. I don't have it set up today. But as you can see, my test car has a really cool interior color combination, which reminds me a lot of the 90s. This is called it's called Torrent Navy. It's a Torrent Navy monotone interior, so it's a dark blue interior. This is also the premium Napa leather that you get standard with the performance package. If you guys go for the standard or the advanced package, you'll either have a leatherette or an actual leather. This model here, as you can see, has the suede Alcantara with the combination two-tone stitching and contrast with the lime or acid green accents, which look really nice. These seats are also heated and ventilated. That's going to be standard if you guys go for the advanced package. The standard model, which will only come with heated seats. You can see the seats themselves, the front seats adjust in 14 different ways. They also offer a massage function only on the driver's seat, however. The passenger seat is a 12-way power function. And it doesn't have the massage function. If you look at the door panel here, you can see it has really nice materials. There's actual stitching with contrast stitching and real leather covering the upper portion, the suede here on this portion, and then more leather over the armrest area. The window controls, they have a high quality metal finish to them. They're one touch for all four, which is nice. You have power folding mirrors, you have two-person memory, you have some aluminum trim here on the door panel as well, and this lower portion here is also a soft touch injection molded plastic. There's a 17 speaker Bang & Olufsen stereo in this car, which is standard. On the advanced trim and up, it sounds better versus the Infinity or Harman Kardon stereo you're going to find in the Hyundai and Kia Twins. You can see there's this nice little control here for your window or for your power mirror controls, and overall the interior definitely looks cool. It makes a great first impression. Now getting inside, you can see the step-in height feels more like a car, because this car only, I believe, has like 6 inches of ground clearance as opposed to an SUV. As I get in and shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. You can see the steering wheel is also a power tilt telescoping function. You can't get that on the Hyundai and Kia Twins. Now starting the vehicle up, you can see the start stop button is down here where you'd expect it to be. And you can see here, actually, let me turn the vehicle off because I always forget to show you guys that. When the vehicle's off, you can see there's this really cool crystal sphere, which the ambient lighting in this vehicle is also interchangeable. I have it kind of like this on the seafoam green color. When I push the start-stop button, you can see this ball rotates to reveal the gear selector, which also has an illuminated function as well. That is a really cool feature. Only the GV60 comes with that. You won't find that, of course, on the Hyundai and Kia Twins. Now, looking at the rest of this cabin, you can see all GV60s are essentially going to come with the twin LCDs. So you have a 12.3-inch instrument panel here, and then a 12.3-inch center display, which also includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Frustratingly, it's still not of the wireless variety for your smartphone integration. I still have to connect my phone via this USB-C cable, where it connects my phone here. But when you have it on the CarPlay function, you can see it takes up the entire screen, and it looks great. Again, it almost looks like one continuous piece of screen, although it's got a little partition here, although it has a seamless look when the screens aren't on. And I think this still looks very nice. It just needs that wireless phone integration. There's also a heads-up display that's included with this car, which is nice. The steering wheel I mentioned earlier has a power tilt telescoping function. It's got a really interesting two-spoke design, and the steering wheel also has paddles that control the regen braking and the shifting. We'll talk about that later in the driving scene. There's also a drive mode selector here. You could driver assistance controls are here, audio controls are here. The horn, it sounds pretty nondescript, but it doesn't sound puny, at least, like some competitors that I've tested. But overall, in terms of the dash materials, you can see soft leather covering the upper portion of the dash. It also has some leather over the instrument panel hood, which is definitely nice. Love the contrasting stitching. You have some more aluminum trim. Traditional dash vents as opposed to some EVs, which have the electronic variety. And then down here, you also have another separate screen for your climate control function, which also includes like haptic feedback. You can kind of go into an eco or driver only setting. There's the auto climate control function. I like how there's a mixture of touchscreen with actual knobs and buttons, which is nice, and an actual knob for your volume control and your tuning control over here. Your 2 USB charging ports are there, which is nice. And then if I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full top-down 360 camera with trajectory, rear cross traffic alert. You can also go to different views for the camera system. We can just show the rear top-down view. You can show kind of like a full view of the rear. You can also do a full 360 perimeter scan, and you can also change the color of the vehicle if you guys would like. I wish, however, the wheels also match. Those wheels are different versus what actually comes on this car, but the camera quality is pretty high resolution. It's what you would expect, of course, in the luxury space. Down here, if you don't want to use the touchscreen, you can also use this little pad, that actually is a trackpad here, or you can also just rotate the wheel. So again, Genesis gives you a lot of different variations if you guys would like. There's also a fingerprint scanner here, so if I have my face recognition on and I can also set the fingerprint scanner, I don't even need a key for this vehicle or my phone. I can basically just use myself, and the vehicle will allow you to start the vehicle and drive it away if you guys would like. A lot of more buttons over here. So there's hard buttons for the vented seats, for the heated seats, your heated steering wheel controls. You have a button there that pulls up the camera system. And I love how the buttons have the metal finish to it with a high quality feel to it. You have a wireless phone charging pad here, center console that has a relatively shallow amount of storage, but at least the armrest pad is nice and padded, of course. The area down here is just kind of open. It's wide open to basically give you almost like a pass-through, or you have a little bit of storage down here. I would have liked to see a little bit more covered storage down there. The seats are also very comfortable and supportive. I will say that the Nappa leather in this car could be softer in terms of just the feel, but the heated and cooled function works well. If I want to kind of go into the massage function, there's a button here. If I just push that, you can cycle between a pelvis, waist, or whole body. That's only on the driver's seat. It's kind of like almost like a slightly nicer version of a lumbar adjustment, but it's not quite as nice as what you're going to find in some of the other luxury brands, of course. The glove compartment is cool because it's actually a drawer bin, which pulls out and it offers a good amount of storage as well. The digital key card is also in here, so if you guys also want to access the vehicle via a key card, you can also do that if you don't have your phone or whatnot, or the facial recognition setup. You can see the headliner material has a suede Alcantara or a cloth if you guys go for the lower trims. There's LED map lighting in here, of course, which contrasts really nicely with the ambient lighting at night, which looks great. You can also change it to several different colors and several different intensities. I think that also adds to the visual drama. The sunroof, as you can see, is very dark tinted, although this doesn't open up to vent. If you want, you can also close this retractable shade, which also is covered with the same suede Alcantara. But overall, you can see the interior still is very, very nice. It isn't quite as roomy as some competitors, however. You can kind of feel the small size of this vehicle, but it's full of the latest technology. I think what Genesis just needs to do is just add wireless integration for the phone, and then it would probably make it close to perfect, at least for me. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area, because this is where the GV60 also has a relatively usable back seat. Now, getting back here, you can see in terms of the space, legroom, Genesis says you have around 37.6 inches back here. It's around 2 inches less versus what you're going to find in the Hyundai and Kia Twins. However, it does have some pretty usable amounts of space. You do have retractable sunshades back here, same leather stitching and suede Alcantara on the actual door panel. This is the only trim to give you heated rear seats, which is a nice touch. A lot of metal controls. You can actually open, unlock, and lock the doors from back here, which is kind of cool, actually, that they give you that function. You can see the rear seats themselves. They also give you the ability to fold them down completely flat by pulling that lever over here, which requires kind of a two-hand operation. You can also recline the seat back as well. You can see that's with it more reclined. This is with it completely upright. Now, getting inside back here, let me go ahead and readjust this seat. As I shut the door itself has a nice solid sounding thunk, and then once I get back here, you can see this is where I have the seat to drive for my driving position, and it definitely isn't quite as roomy as the last Ioniq 5 that I was in, but still, this is a relatively good amount of space for average size adults. You can see you have rear seat air vents here, which is nice. You have 2 USB-C charging ports. You have a pretty big storage cubby here, which actually is really nice, and I now understand why this compartment here is a little bit on the shallow side. You have 2 storage pockets in the door, or 2 front seats as well. And then if you fold this down, you can see there's an armrest that gives you 2 cup holders. I like the fact that the suede Alcantara carries over back here. And if you're looking at the headroom space, you can see for somebody my height, my head actually comes pretty close to the ceiling. So keep that in mind if you guys are over 6 feet. This low roof and the panoramic glass roof is taking up a little bit of your space. But overall, for those of you who need to carry average size adults or perhaps a smaller or a car seat back here, or at least one, the GV60 can certainly accommodate that. So here we are back inside the Genesis GV60. When I last had a chance to drive this car, it was a little over a year ago when Genesis basically loaned me one that looked almost identical to this, although it was a pearly white color as opposed to this Matterhorn white matte exterior color. But in terms of the specs, things haven't really changed aside from the new standard range model that has rear-wheel drive. However, we're driving the performance version, which means up to 483 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. It technically has almost 100 less horsepower in boost mode versus the EV6 GT, which I tested last year on this local road as well. But let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise. I'm at 92% state of charge. We have it in sport mode. Let's go ahead and push the boost button here. Love how this thing will literally spin out the front tires. All right, we got 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, which actually pretty much matches the time that I got in this vehicle last year. Now, on that same stretch last year, it struggled a little bit more to put the power down. We still have these 21-inch wheels on a 255 wide Michelin all-season tire. It still will struggle to put the power down at times, but that boost function that I just pressed basically gives you an extra 60-ish horsepower for up to 10 seconds. The torque figure remains the same at 516. That 0 to 60 time is about 0.4 seconds slower versus the last EV6 GT that I tested on that same stretch there with a similar state of charge. So it's obviously still very, very fast, but it's a little disappointing to find that Kia essentially offers a faster version of this car for a little bit less money. Let's go ahead and try it here. This time I won't hit the boost button. We'll just floor it. Not as much wheel spin. 4.2 seconds there. Now that's with it more slightly uphill. So to me, it seems like when you push the boost button, it'll probably shave around 0.2 seconds off the 0 to 60 time, which again makes a little bit of a difference, but most of the times you're just gonna put your foot down and you're gonna have instantaneous power and torque. I mean, that's kind of the beauty about every EV is it's very, very quick to accelerate. There's no gear changes here, just smooth, very instantaneous power. And that's kind of the beauty about the GV60 performance or any other electric vehicle. Now, I haven't had a chance to drive just the standard GV60 Advance, basically the one that has 314 horsepower. There's also the new standard range rear-wheel drive model, which has 225 horsepower. Basically the standard range, or I'm sorry, the dual motor non-performance should get to 60 in the mid 4.5 second range. So obviously you do get quicker acceleration when you go for the performance. I'm just not entirely sure it's worth the extra $9,000 that Genesis charges you, because remember, this is the luxury version of the eGMP architecture. It's going to cost you essentially a pretty penny to do so. Now, the beauty about when you go for this trim is it does come with an adaptive suspension system, and I do like how you can adjust the dampers based on what drive mode you're in. I have it in sport right now, and it's in firmest setting. There's also an eco setting, which will really tailor back all the power. This car almost feels like it's towing something. It makes it feel a little bit less jumpy, a little less crazy. And then you go to comfort, and that's essentially the normal everyday driving mode that you can use in everyday driving. Now, there's one new feature that I don't remember this car having last year when I tested it, and that's if you go into the setting menu here, you go into the vehicle, there's this new setting in the drive mode called VGS, and that provides almost like a gas engine-like experience because it will actually give you gear changes. It actually shows a tachometer there, and you can actually feel it mimicking shifts, which is crazy because this is something that the new Ioniq 5N is going to have, and I haven't had a chance to drive that yet, but you know what? That is a really cool feature, and it gives this car a visceral feel that you don't feel in any other EV vehicle. And if I pull the paddle here, it actually downshifts. It shows like an RPM, a fake RPM, obviously. And it actually gives you the gear changes, which is super cool. Didn't expect Hyundai or Genesis to do something like that, but let's go ahead and floor it here. We'll put it in boost mode, although it won't give you that VGS in boost mode. Oh, God. Oh, wow. All right, so there on that level surface, we actually got a quicker 0 to 60 time because there was less wheel spin, 3.66 seconds. So that's actually not that much slower versus what you find in the Kia EV6 GT. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you guys are, looking for the performance of that car, but you want the additional luxury that Genesis gives you with this performance model here. Oh, Now, what I did there is I turned off the stability and the traction control, and this thing will literally roast the front tires when you have that turned off. And you can see a cloud of smoke basically behind you because the front inner or front outside wheel is spinning uncontrollably when you put your foot down in a turn there. That just makes this car super fun. Again, I've left the VGS mode on, and that's so cool. I really like that a lot. That reminds me so much of an actual internal combustion vehicle. And this is something that you can look forward to in the Ioniq 5N. So again, pull the paddle here. It creates like a shift. That's awesome. I have to admit, that is probably the coolest feature I've ever experienced on an EV, because as an enthusiast, I'm worried that every EV is going to drive the same. But listen to this, guys. It even tells you what virtual fake gear you're in. So this gets me really pumped and excited to drive the Ioniq 5N, because that is just something that really an enthusiast would think of to do something like this. But put your foot down. It actually won't shift up when you have it in this manual mode. It actually will kind of hold the RPMs, the fake RPMs, and it'll bog. So you have to, again, put it or pull the paddle to give you that actual upshift feeling. But that's really cool. Okay, let me turn that off, because most of the times you're just going to be driving this vehicle in EV mode. And this is where the GV60 has several different sounds. So right now I have it in its E-motor, which is the electric motor sound that it's basically amplifying. It creates that fake electric sound. There's also a futuristic sound. And you can also turn it off entirely. There's also a custom sound where you can kind of blend the three different sounds together. You can go back to G motor, which creates that fake sound without the actual shifting if you'd like. So my personal favorite is E-motor. I think that gives you the best balance. It basically just amplifies the natural electric motor sound, and you can, again, you can turn that on or off based on, you know, whether you want that or not. In terms of the range, now I've been driving this car around for a full week, and it's winter outside, although it's been milder the last week. It's been in the upper 30s to low 40s, and at a full charge in eco mode, or in eco mode without the heater on, this thing would show around 220 miles on a full charge. That was what the trip computer was showing. You put it into sport mode, it drops to like 203. In my week's worth of testing, I was averaging around 210 miles on a full charge. Now, obviously that's less versus the 235 that Genesis claims. However, when I tested this vehicle last year in the summertime, I was getting around 250 miles of range. So Hyundai and Kia and Genesis, they tend to be, you know, very realistic with their range figures. This car also is one of the quickest charging EVs out there. It has a 11 kilowatt onboard charger, so it'll take about 7 hours to charge on my level 2 at home on a 48 amp. You can also do a DC fast charge on a 350 and go up to, you know, 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes, which is still among the quickest in the industry. And this car also is relatively easy to drive, or not relative, it's pretty easy to drive. It feels nice and small, compact. It's not super sporty. You feel the weight of this car, almost 5,000 pounds, but I will say the steering is quick and sharp and direct, and it just has a pretty soft suspension. So even in sport mode, this thing rides pretty well. It does have these big 21-inch wheels, so if you're looking for a softer ride, I'd recommend just going with the advanced package and just getting the 20-inch wheels. You can also get, I think, a 19 now, which improves the range for up to 294. I'm hoping I can test out that longer range version at some point later this year. But overall, I still think the GV60 is an appealing EV. It's no longer the quickest in the eGMP architecture. I kind of think that Genesis is going to probably upgrade this car next year for 2025 with the powertrain from the EV6 GT or the Ioniq 5N. Remember, those models have, you know, 576 or up to 641 horsepower. But overall, you know, if you guys are looking for a luxurious, quirky, different, but also fun electric vehicle that charges insanely fast, and you don't necessarily need to have the most range, you should definitely still be putting this one at the top of your list. So after spending a full week with the high-performance version of the GV60, I have to say, when I first drove this vehicle last year, I was pretty impressed. Obviously, another year has gone by, and there's always new competitors showing up in the space. And even after, you know, spending a week with this model here, I'm still very impressed with what Genesis has to offer here with the GV60 line. Obviously, if you guys are looking for even more range, there's now that standard range model with rear drive that offers nearly 300 miles. I'm hoping I can get a hold of one of those sometime later this year to test, so I can see if the range is going to be actually more than 300 300 miles. The performance variant, however, if you're an enthusiast, still is very much worth a look. I love the fact that we have nearly 500 horsepower, 0 to 60 in around 3.6 seconds. It's very quick. It's actually only 0.2 seconds slower versus the last EV6 GT that I tested. So keep in mind, even though this doesn't have quite as much power, this thing should be almost as fast in the real world, especially if you guys are constantly utilizing that boost button. Love that button, although Kia offers something similar, of course, in the EV6 GT. In terms of the range, here in the winter temperatures, this car is getting around 200 to 210 miles, which isn't wonderful. However, the range figures here are pretty close to what this car, competes with in terms of the Volvo C40 Recharge, which I believe offers around 257 miles of range. The Audi Q4 e-tron, a Sportback, also offers around 242 miles of range. So I would like to see Genesis improve the range, especially on the performance version. But if you guys are looking for maximum range, you're probably not going to go for this model anyways. This is going to give you maximum acceleration and the best handling. In terms of the interior, I still think this is one of the nicest interiors you're going to find, especially if you guys love cool little gadgets here and there with that crystal shifter that still rotates every time you start the car. That's a really cool wow factor. The seats are also very comfortable. The ride quality is also comfortable, despite the fact that this car is the performance variant on 21-inch wheels. In terms of the handling dynamics, if you guys are looking for the best handling vehicles, that's where you're going to want to go for the EV6 GT or the upcoming Ioniq 5N. But that VGS function, where this car basically mimics shifts and gives you the virtual feeling that you're driving a gas-powered sports car, is a really cool feature that I feel like was new for 2024. And it kind of adds to the visceral appeal, because if you guys remember all my other reviews on EVs, they're all starting to drive a little bit the same, which this car will give you that if you guys drive it in EV function. However, in that VGS setting, it really gives you the feeling of an internal combustion engine. I think that's something that a lot of manufacturers need to start going with, because it gives this car a unique feel that me as an enthusiast, I very much appreciate. Now, if you guys are looking to add this vehicle into basically your driveway, what's it going to cost? Well, thankfully, because of that lower price model, the GV60 is cheaper for 2024. The base price of that standard range rear drive model is going to basically come in at around $52,000. Now, that is around $10,000 more expensive versus the base price of the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. However, with what Genesis gives you here in terms of its unique style, the luxury aspect of it, the technology, and the more premium interior, it kind of is a worthy upcharge, especially if you guys want to have a luxury brand. It's going to cost you around $8 grand more to get all-wheel drive to go for the advanced package, which is around $60,000. The performance is where things get tricky, because this car starts at around $69,500. When you add the matte finish paint, the destination charge, my tester here comes in at around $72,500. Now, that's almost 10 grand more versus an EV6 GT. As of this filming, we don't have final pricing yet of the upcoming Ioniq 5, and I suspect that'll also be in the mid $60,000 range. So keep in mind, you're buying this car here because you want the luxury and you want the performance. It's not going to be as fast as the other two vehicles in the eGMP architecture, but if you guys like the style, you like something a little bit smaller, you want something that's also quirky and different and unique, then I highly recommend putting the GV60 at the top of your list. I'm just not entirely sure the performance is worth the extra charge. My recommendation, also check out the advanced model, which will save you around $9,000, and that could be kind of the sweet spot in the GV60 family. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2024 Genesis GV60 performance. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.